Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Super excited for the opportunity we have to chat it up with Beau Oyler of Enlisted Design about his journey in building various successful businesses and contributing to those businesses along the way. What up, Beau?
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise. Really excited to dig in on what you're all about. I mean, first and foremost, the hair is just on point. Just looking dialed
It just
today.
keeps growing and growing. There's not much I can do about it. Just try to tame it every morning. To the
No
best of my
doubt.
ability.
Yeah.
I have a brother who went to a barber that all he does is cut curly hair. Like that's his thing.
Wow.
Like have you ever done that? Like gone to like a curly hair specialist?
I've heard of these places, and I've never been to one. When I moved from Oakland to Salt Lake, it took me about 6 months to find a barber who had ever even cut curly hair. And so, but I did. I finally found somebody, and gratefully, she's about 2 doors down from the Salt Lake studio.
Oh, nice.
There you go.
She's helping me manage the chaos.
That's amazing. I follow this girl on TikTok. I can't remember her name right now, but she's been going through a journey of embracing her curls and her process of, loving those locks, which is great.
You just kind of have to do that.
Yeah.
You just have to do that. I didn't really have very curly hair until I hit puberty. And then when I did, it was just like, I remember, so I grew up on the coast and in California, and I remember surfing this one day, getting out, just shaking my head, and then it just dried. And it was like when I was like 14 or so. And I was just like, wait a second, I have super curly hair. When did that happen? And then it was just like, it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger over the years.
That's insane. So did you grow up like surfing culture and kind of skate, surf?
Very much so.
That's awesome.
Surf, skate, snow. Grew up in Carmel, California. It's like 2 hours south of San Francisco, Monterey, Pebble Beach, Carmel. And grew up pretty close to the beach, walkable, and surfed probably 6 days a week when there was surf. And it was great. Loved it. Came from a surfing family. My parents grew up in San Clemente, California, which is South Orange County.
My brother lives
All my
there right
cousins
now.
still live there.
It's a good spot. They're probably homies. Yeah. That's a good area. We try to visit them.
Yeah,
often.
It's a great area. Love it. Still go down there often. So, and then dope. A lot of my family's in the surf industry as well. So I've worked for
super cool.
They've worked for every brand you can imagine. My cousin's been the VP of design at Stance for the last 7 years. Stance socks.
Yep.
And it's just fun to see them grow those brands down there.
It's amazing what they've done, and the brand that they've built is really, really awesome. And
that's somebody you should have on the podcast. He's got stories, dude.
We should.
He's got crazy stories.
Yeah, we should. We'll put that on our list because they've done some cool stuff, and I had some challenges, but fought through it, and it's always a journey. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. So talk to us a little bit about where this obsession with design and creativity, first job or inspiration that really was that moment. Did you always know that you were creative? Was it something that you developed through school? Like, walk us through a little bit about that journey of really embracing your creative side.
Cool. So let's see. I think there's two things. There's the creative side, and then there's the entrepreneurial side. And I think that kind of makes this really interesting blend of the way that I think. On the entrepreneurial side, I'll share a story when I was like probably 5 or 6. It was summertime in Carmel, which means it was probably like 61 degrees. It's cold every day there.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting on the front porch. My mom, we have 4 boys in my family, and my mom was just like out of the house, and she locked the door, and it's like she was done right for the day. Yeah. So we were out playing whatever, and I'm sitting on the porch, like it was a little duplex that we were renting, and I'm sitting on the front steps, and I'm crying, and she comes out, and she sits next to me, and my mom's this incredibly empathetic, creative artist. I think that's part of why we grew up in Carmel. It was a little art colony back in the 70s.
Nice, yeah.
And so And so she sits down next to me. She's like, "Oh, what's wrong? Like, it's summer. Go play."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Mom, I don't want to go play. I want to do something that's going to change the world." And she,
Oh
and she
my
just kind
gosh.
of puts her arm around me, and she's just like, "Oh, honey, that's nice. You will. But today, you need to just go play."
Yeah.
That's
And so
amazing.
that was kind of the entrepreneurial side, right? Where it's just like, I just want to freaking do something that's going to change people's lives, change the world.
That's
cool.
amazing. That early on, just having that presence of mind is awesome.
Did you find?
Yeah, it's not like it was something I was even thinking about, right? It was just like, that's just what I wanted to do today.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Did you find as you got older that you were starting to live in that world a little bit, like as a kid entrepreneur? Like, were there things that you did, like having your own business or that kind of thing? Like, I remember us doing lemonade stands and that kind of stuff. Like, are there a couple of things that you could share about that?
For sure. Yeah. So I was a chubby kid growing up until I was probably about 15 or so. And you can always rely on the chubby kid for good candy. And so I would sell candy at school. I would ride my bike over to Safeway and buy a bunch of stuff.
Booyah.
And then I would sell it at school. So I think that's where it kind of started. And it was amazing what kids would pay for a candy bar.
What was your go-to? I was the candy man in 7th grade as well. So what were your go-to treats, dude? Mine, blow pops were popular in my day.
No, for sure.
Charge a kid 50 cents for a blow pop and just sling them out of your backpack.
I did a candy stand in like 4th grade, and I had like flyers, and on the flyers it said, "Why wait till Halloween?" That was my pitch. Like, why wait till Halloween? You can come buy a candy right now.
Dude,
I love it.
That's legit.
I love it.
That's amazing.
That's like the adult or the kid version of "It's 5 o'clock somewhere."
Oh yeah,
right, for day drinking.
No doubt. It's so true.
Who came up with it? Did you come up with that? Who came up with "It's 5 o'clock somewhere"? That's
some beer company, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the creative side, was that something that you said your mom was an artist? Is that something that was just innate in you, or did it take time to develop?
It definitely took time to develop, but it was always in me for sure. My grandpa taught industrial design in LA in college for like 30 years. And so when I was little, I spent a lot of time staying with my grandparents. We have some pretty significant health challenges in our family. 3 out of the 4 of us boys are hemophiliacs. And so it means that our blood doesn't clot.
Yeah.
And we were super active. Like, my parents were very smart in taking the approach of like, you're not going to be home playing Nintendo, wearing helmets and knee pads all the time. Like, freaking go play.
Yeah.
And we'll just spend time in the hospital. And that's what we did. Spend a lot of time in the hospital.
Wow.
But we were also super strong and healthy because of it. And so my older brother, Ben, so I'm the second one. So he's about a year and a half older. He was the first kid to ever be treated for AIDS at Stanford Hospital. And this is like circa 84, 85.
Wow.
And so we lived up in Palo Alto for about a year and a half while this was all going on. And then when things would get really serious, we'd get into LA and stay with my grandparents pretty often. And so they were just super good to us. And so my grandpa would take me to work. And he had this little 1966 Porsche 914. It was amazing. It's like that little boxy one, like the Target top, And so we would go to his studio at the school, and I would just work with the students and make stuff. And he would just ask me every day, he's like, "What do you want to make today?" And I'd be like, "I want to make this." And he's like, "Okay, let's do it." And so we would just make stuff.
Dude.
And that was very pivotal for me for him to incept the idea that if I had an idea and if I had the right tools and know how to make it, I could actually make something tangible.
100%. That's such a great question. Like, what would you like to make today? Getting your brain to really think about, what can I create? I have these tools. I have these resources. I have the studio. Like, such a rad playground.
Isn't that cool?
That's incredible.
I think that's so important too, like having the tools and the space available to do things.
Yeah.
That's huge, because
Yeah.
if those things are there and ready and available, it's like it just allows for so much potential for creation.
Yeah, totally agree. That's one of the things that we've done at Enlisted since day one. Was we very much want, like, all of our employees, we're not a big agency. We're about 55 people right now. And everybody gives their best to Enlisted, works overtime, like, their focus, their priority is Enlisted. And because of that, we have this trust here where I actually want them to do side projects and side hustles, as long as it's not competitive to Enlisted and to our clients. And so after hours, I just say, the studio's yours. The 3D printers, the laser cutters, the CAD, the software, the whatever we have, the CNC, like whatever we have, it's your playground. Give me your best and first.
Yeah.
And then whatever you want to do at night, the studio's yours.
Do your thing. Do you think that is a tribute to your grandpa?
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
That's amazing.
And in fact, down in the basement in Salt Lake, when we opened this studio, it was my parents were moving out of the country, and my dad had inherited my grandpa's entire shop. So when he retired, the school gave him his shop, that like all the cabinets and everything that he built out, and then whatever tools he wanted. And so my dad inherited that when he passed away, and he needed a place to store it. And so we built out the Salt Lake studio in the basement, a full woodworking shop. And we've got a picture of my grandpa back in his
incredible.
Like, design days. Yeah, it's pretty rad.
Dude, having a wood shop and just being able to like make things with my hands it's just I think a dream of any creator. Just you get so caught up in the digital side, like being able to like go in and play around and build stuff is a lot of fun. Let's dive deeper into Enlisted. Like I'd love to really break that down, because I think your journey and where you have gotten to has played into so much of what you've been able to build and draw on, and this example with your grandpa and incorporating that. How do you feel like you've brought all that together in Enlisted? Like, what are the things that, through your experience, starting out from what we gathered, starting out at a big company like Williams-Sonoma, then various other projects to where you are today, what do you feel like are key moments that have contributed to the success you're having at Enlisted and the culture that you're creating?
Yeah. So in April, we turned 15. Enlisted turns 15 years old. And so it's been a bit, right? We started in 2008, potentially the worst time to possibly start a business.
Worst economic time downturn.
I think it was the worst time, but it turned out to be the best time. What was happening is all of these larger agencies in San Francisco their clients were cutting back. And so what was previously a $5 million budget turned into $1 million budget. $1 million budget turned into a $200,000 budget. And the bigger agencies weren't nimble enough to be able to pivot and do that kind of work, right? To do more for less. And so it turned out to be a great time for us to start. And we had a really incredible first 2 years, 2-year run. And so we grew the studio. We hired a few employees. Myself and my co-founder were both industrial designers. And so we had that covered. So we hired brand, we hired visual design, packaging design, and really began to create this suite of like not industrial designers trying to do graphic design or branding, right? Or brand designers trying to figure out like whatever this form factor should be. Yeah. And so we just hired, the best we could find in their different expertise and started building this team out. And then there was a down for us. There was a big slowdown in 2010 where work essentially paused for about 6 months. And we had some savings, and we decided to use the savings to keep the studio and employees afloat. And we, in that time, we started a brand called Urbio, which was essentially our take on like, okay, cool. This is, we build brands for all these other companies. At what point are we going to do it ourselves?
Yeah.
And so that's what we focused on. We launched it. It was year one on Kickstarter. Kickstarter did a big thing where it's like, if you're going to do a Kickstarter, do it like this. And they basically broke down the Urbio campaign.
Oh, sick.
And then we launched Urbio, which was great. Right before we launched, we were invited to go on Shark Tank. And so we pitched on Shark Tank, which was a really cool experience. And then we launched Urbio. We went in the Container Store, and then which is still there today. We've had a dedicated end cap in the Container Store for 8 years now, which I think it's the longest running brand, the Container Store on end cap.
Yeah.
And then we grew it. We went to Target, Office Max, Office Depot, Staples, all the retail that it made sense. And then we sold it to a big housewares company out of Chicago. And there was a lot of learning there. What I learned from the Urbio experience, which was a number of years, right? It's not like this just happened.
Yeah.
But, in the meantime that Urbio was growing, Enlisted was growing as well after that 6 month client hiatus. And so I was CEO of both Urbio and Enlisted. And what I learned when we sold Urbio, I kind of took some time, and for an entrepreneur, that means about 5 hours to sit down and think through, what did I learn here? And what I learned was I'm really good at creating brands that consumers love and lust after and want and crave. And I'm crap at running the logistics and the marketing and the 3PL stuff and all of that, all of the stuff, running the business.
I feel you.
And so after that, I focused on Enlisted and okay, how do we run Enlisted with the business principles that I've now learned from Urbio? Which is kind of like my makeshift MBA, my street MBA. But how can we do it, with design at the forefront?
Totally. You said a word that I noticed is big and bold on your website, crave or craveable, as it is on your website. How do you feel like you make a brand craveable?
Yes, I love that. So there's this thing, there's this emotional connection that consumers have with their products. Right. And the products, I'll show you my phone, right? So this is my iPhone. And it's there is absolutely no reason that I should have any emotional connection whatsoever to this inanimate object. It's glass. It's plastic, it's metal, and it's a bunch of chips inside.
So
and
true.
Yet I paid, I don't remember how much, $1,200, $1,500,
I don't
whatever.
know.
Why did I choose this?
You didn't even think
else?
that's the reality. You just I don't know, I got it. Next phone.
Order. My thought was making sure that my alarm was set for 5:01 so that I could make sure that I got my order in first. And so they are a good example, but I think there's other examples that are just as compelling, where they begin to create this thing of sometimes I'm walking down the store aisle, Target, Whole Foods, Costco, wherever, and I'm like, what's that? I don't even know what it is, but I want it.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's that intangible craveability. And then when I walk up, I see it, or maybe I've been, a targeted ad or whatever. And it's wow, that really speaks to me. And then from the first image to the photography, to the product, to the website, to the narrative, copy, content, all of those things begin to come in to create this cohesive brand experience. And if it's done in such a way that it really speaks to me, then it begins to build that craveability because it's connecting, the emotion to the inanimate object. And I would say that the craveability is kind of the sinew between those two things.
Oh, it's cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your Urbio. I'd never heard of it. Sean, I think you'd really get a kick out of that. I mean, talk about craveability. The design of this is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty clean. I'll show you here in the studio. We've got a little Urbio installation in both studios, but I'll show you the one here in Salt Lake. Let's see if I can position the camera. There you go.
Oh, dang.
All right, so we've got it for plants here, but you go to Facebook or Square, corporate campuses, and they've got them in the bathrooms for toiletries, or they've got them at at their behind their desks for office supplies or whatever.
We need that.
It's a
right.
pretty cool
We
product.
need it. Yeah,
Right
it's
here,
like I'm looking at
It's
this.
fun.
we got
too.
a perfect
got this,
spot
like,
that we need to.
I'm looking at these blank
do you?
spaces
Yeah,
on
it's
our
dope.
walls. It's like, man,
We
we
need
need
some plant action. That's dope.
You need some Urbio for sure.
Yeah, we do.
So is it magnetic?
Pretty fun. Yeah, it's magnetic. There's just little magnets inside the pots. You can see here's some magnets behind this little piece of rubber.
Yeah.
And then that will stick onto any ferrous metal. But we created these modular wall plates so that we could kind of guide and help people
like a
curate.
grid.
So each one has like 4 dimples so that it wasn't just kind of like a shit show all over the metal. It was like helping them kind of like square it out so that it's nice and clean.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So kind of fun. And this is our trophy wall here. I'll give you a quick
Oh
pan.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
We like to highlight some of our clients.
Which
on the
is an impressive list, no doubt.
It's fun. Yeah, we get to work with a lot of cool clients. You know, Allbirds is really fun. Mr. Beast and the whole Feastables, Mr. Beast Burger is really fun. We're launching our own brand, so Pupford, Pet. We've got Oreo, which is a health and beauty device. We got Parker, one of our amazing designers.
What up, dude?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a mix of like brands you've heard of, brands you love, right? But also brands that you haven't heard of that in 5 years from now are going to be the brands that you love.
100%. Walk me through, how do you balance, this is super interesting. How do you balance, because I know, going back to your example of walking through the store, you see something, you see a product, you see it online, and it just like, it resonates with you in a way, whether it's the aesthetic, it's the copy, all the things that you described. How when you're crafting that, because obviously there's a lot of data, a lot of process that goes into that. How do you balance the consumer insights, the data, all the research that you have to do to get to that stage, to get something in a store or on a shelf or launched, even, especially at the scale of the brands that you're working with, but then still add that craveable flair, that brand, design that may push back against some of the data, that may be counter to what the founders or the creative directors or the client is saying, no, it should be going this way. And it's like, look, this is the way that it should happen. Yeah. How do you feel like you think about the balance of the data and the creative coming together to really create that special moment for a consumer on a shelf, online, or wherever they may discover it?
Yeah. So the data piece is really important. So that's one of the reasons that I joined Pattern. So I sold Enlisted to Pattern, pattern.com about 2.5 years ago, and joined them. And we have access to all of their data. And what that means is, so Pattern as a whole is the second largest Amazon reseller in the world. Amazon's number 1.
Wow.
And so Pattern's in a very good position. And has incredible data on what consumers want. Okay. Now, wanting and craving are 2 different things. And so Pattern, we're able to harness their data and bring it into our strategy phase of a program to understand what consumers are searching for and what they're commenting, and aggregate and humanize the data so that we can understand it. And we're very much like, data doesn't dictate, data informs. So what happens is we're collecting data both from the Pattern data, from quant and qual research, from market insights, from consumer insight reports, from other projects that we're working on. Obviously, not sharing proprietary data. And then we aggregate that, right? And we synthesize that data. The strategy, we have 3 full-time strategists at Enlisted, and the strategy team synthesizes that in a way that's very unique, because our strategists are or were designers before dedicating themselves fully to strategy. And so they understand, how do we bridge from strategy and insights into creative? How do we build something that isn't dictated by the data, but informed by the data? And then that's where the exploration comes in. Once you understand the market, you understand the consumer, then we explore the concepts that are going to begin to speak to that consumer in a spectrum of mild to wild. And that's not done in a vacuum. That's done generally with
focus
our
groups
partners, with our clients.
and things like that?
Yeah, well, with the consumer first, and then with our clients. And I mean, that's literally why we're named Enlisted, is because we enlist our clients into our creative
Dope.
team,
Yeah.
and they enlist us into their business team.
I love that.
And while it's a huge investment to hire Enlisted, we generally see a 10 to 20x return in revenue once our designs are launched. Of whatever that initial investment was. So if a company invests $1 million into a project, the growth, if it's of that size, like the growth, they're seeing 10, 20, 30 million in increased, incremental revenue.
That's such an interesting, I'm going through a similar process actually with Keep Nature Wild, a company that I built and sold 2 years ago. And we're now, partnering again and building out, really trying to lead the brand and community side. And a piece that I think is a big challenge is the real and like created walls that exist between departments that don't necessarily, like, some departments need it, but for the most part, it's a very small brand as far as team goes and what we're trying to accomplish, to where literally over the next 30 days, I'm turning product marketing, content, and impact into one core brand team. Because that cohesion of, it's all the same connection to the consumer. It's all, whether we're picking up trash as part of the mission or selling product or marketing the product, it's connecting to the consumer. And so that's a really interesting way of approaching as an agency, of getting on that team. Because then like, even in our small team, a handoff can change. It's like telephone, that handoff can completely change the outcome or the intended outcome of something. So how do you, because I'd imagine it's a process to get integrated as
very much so
a team member, basically, or a partner, where you're creating this within and without, which I'd imagine also gives you, because I have this very unique, like, inside knowledge and external. I've been out of the business for 2 years, so I have this like very interesting dynamic of like, I don't know the business, but I know the business so well.
For sure. And now you're jumping back in, right? Which a lot's changed over 2 years.
Exactly.
And sometimes you need somebody to come in with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective,
totally,
but with enough context, right? That you can come in and say, okay, that's great that you did it this way. Like, here's where we're seeing the brand fragmented, right? If we can bring these parties together, these groups together to collaborate, we're going to bring greater cohesion. Here's what that looks like.
Yeah. So, that's, I mean, break down for me, if you can, how could a small brand do both the data and intuition and creative piece, in a simpler way? Is there a way that, some of our listeners, some that are building a small business or a startup, like, can apply that same thing at a smaller scale, and then also potentially for other agencies or smaller or even teams, like it applies to this team at Keep Nature Wild, of really integrating, across teams to create the best outcome.
Yeah. So a couple of things. No ego. So anybody that you meet at Enlisted is going to be very confident. Yeah. Like, very confident in what they do.
Love it.
But there's a huge difference between confidence and ego. So simultaneously, that person, that designer, that PM, that strategist, whoever it is, will also have no ego. And the question becomes, rather than it building the Enlisted portfolio or their personal portfolio, what does this consumer crave? What does this consumer want? What does this consumer need? Yes. So it's always back to the consumer. And we remind our clients that as well, right? Because oftentimes, especially in a large organization, we're working with a brand manager or even an ABM who is looking to make a move, looking to do something that, make a name, is going to put them in a good light.
Yep.
And we want them to be successful,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
Because then they're loyal to us.
Yeah.
and they are.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we get to remind them that we're working for the consumer. At the end of the day, we work for the consumer. And so what does she want? What does she need? What is she going to crave? And then we make decisions based on that versus what they want or what we want. And it's interesting. I remember one time we had a really big tech company out of the Bay Area. I won't say their name. Everybody knows them. Everybody has it in their at their house.
Yeah.
And their design team came in because they were interested in working with us. And so, brought them into the studio and did the whole pitch and everything. And they didn't hire us. And so as we were following up, just asked them, hey, any insights? And they just said, yeah, the only insight is that you guys seemed like you were kind of all over the map. Like when we look at your portfolio, you're in a lot of different categories. You're doing a lot of different things between industrial design, packaging, branding, digital, even some of this like 3D stuff. But like, we don't really understand how
we can't put you into a box.
Who's doing, like they're like, how is an agency doing footwear going to do our products also?
Yeah.
And it's like,
we've experienced that for sure.
Have you experienced that?
Yeah.
And so, and likewise, we've had clients who don't hire us because they're looking for a very specific style. And so I think, and we're just really confident in that we are not, of course we have like, design ethos within Enlisted, but our ethos don't lead to a specific design style. Yeah. Like lots of our competitors do.
Totally.
The goal is always to create the right brand for the right person at the right time.
100%.
And if we're doing that, then it's going to be successful as a business and as a brand versus just successful on our portfolio.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm curious to know, I we want to hear about working with Mr. Beast and what that process has been, because who doesn't love Mr. Beast, right?
No.
But I'm just curious to know what have been some of your favorite projects to work on, or some of the hardest projects to work on too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So oftentimes I'm asked, what's a brand that you would want to work with, or what are your favorite brands? For me, some of my favorite projects are brands that you may not even be aware of, or you may.
Yeah.
I'll give you one example. So what I love, rather than targeting certain brands, I love targeting categories. So I love the idea of walking down the aisle, and like I have a friend named Simon who started a company called Quip, like Quip toothbrushes.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't know Quip, you should definitely check Quip out. So
I've heard of Quip. Yeah.
He's really cool industrial designer. He's walking down the aisle and he's like, how is it that nobody's designed a toothbrush since like IDEO did their like swirly, whatever toothbrush in 1993? Like, how come nobody's loved this category? And so he designed the Quip toothbrush, right? And from that, he essentially launched the Quip brand, and they've grown tremendously.
Yeah.
And they're doing wildly successful business, which is great. And so that's where I really find energy, is categories that haven't been loved, and then going into that category and being the first to love that category.
Totally.
Pet food is a category like that. The first time that somebody reached out with a pet food brand, it was like 2011. And we're like, pet food, huh? And I go to Petco or PetSmart or whatever, and I'm walking around and I'm like, holy crap. Like, I'm like at a farm and feed store. Like nobody has even considered these brands.
Yeah. And
so we rebranded this company called Merrick. They went from 4 feet of shelf space to 180 feet of shelf space within 4 years of post redesign, and grew it from, roughly a $50 million business to a $600 million business within those 4 years.
So I'm curious.
So insane, right?
Yeah. Like with that, what were the things that you changed or that you did differently with them that allowed them to grow in that way?
So it was 2011. There's this dude named Jamie Oliver who's doing this like food revolution. We're in Oakland, right next to Berkeley. Alice Waters, restaurant is Chez Panisse is right there. Like there's this food movement happening, right? Like Alice got invited by Michelle Obama to come to the, to plant the garden at the White House, and like there's all this kind of thing happening in the Bay Area around food. And so the key assumption was, can we bring food trends into pet, which had never been done before? And so we created this concept. It was a pitch between different agencies. We created this concept where a paid pitch, I will add. We do not do free pitches ever.
Oh, nice. Interesting.
And so it was this pitch, and we're going up against like Kit Heinrichs of Pentagram, like big agencies, right? We're just like this little, 5-10 person team in Oakland. And we had this idea of like, okay, wait a second. What if we took the food from the sources that the Merrick family is sourcing from today, the farmers in Texas, the apples in Washington, the whatever, and like we prepared the meat and the potatoes and the peas and whatever those ingredients are, like as if it was human food on a butcher block, and it was about to be, plated, but it was pre-plating. Like it was just the ingredients on a butcher block, like human food. And we put that on a bag, and we're like, Merrick, real food. Here's the top 5 ingredients. Right. Wow. And this was total collaboration with the marketer as well. Like what could we say, like the head of marketing at Merrick, what could we say and how could we say it? Because we didn't know the pet category at all. And so we took it to test. They took it to test with qualitative consumers. It was like 2011. And they created a mock shelf set, and they put up all of the competitive set of other the top pet food brands, and then had full scale real mock-ups of our concepts. And so we're sitting behind the glass, and the consumers are like shopping for their pet food, right?
This is so fascinating to me. Awesome. This is so fascinating.
And so we're watching them, and it's like this tense moment, right? We're just like, oh my gosh, are they going to pick our pet food? And not one of the consumers picked up our bag. Not one.
Whoa.
Wow.
And we're like, okay, interesting. So the moderator comes back, and she's like, what do you want me to do? And the marketer, she's brilliant. And he goes, go ahead, be transparent, let them know that we're from this company, and ask them why they didn't pick our bag. And so she goes back in, she says, okay, great. So you all picked this and this and this. Instead of asking why you picked those, we actually want to flip it. The Merrick marketing team is behind that glass, as is the design team. Why didn't you pick these bags? And they looked up and they said, well, because it's not pet food. It's human food.
Oh, and we're just
gosh. Like, done. Like, that's it.
That's huge.
That's it.
Yep.
Huge. And so, like, the changes that we made from that concept to what went on shelf, and actually is still on shelf today with some of the SKUs, was we put an illustration of a dog on the front cover, and that was
totally. Yep. Wow.
And so it was dog food all of a sudden, and that's how they went from. They just exploded, right? Because the insight was humans want food that looks good enough that they could eat, that they would actually feed to their pet.
Totally.
Yeah.
So one example of many.
Yeah,
so interesting.
That's incredible. That makes me think about just that process of going through, like, where do you feel like you draw on for those insights? Like, what I'm getting at is, like, I feel like I very much understand how your brain and what you're describing works, because I feel very similar in the connections that you draw from design and marketing and brand and this like food movement that was happening at the time, just like, which I'd imagine also plays into why you guys work with a shoe brand and a pet food brand and a toothbrush brand, because you are, it feels like very much intuitive with how these things come together, with how the consumer thinks. Is there a process to that you have for really getting into the mind of the consumer? We've got data, we've got, you can make mood boards, you can make all this, but is there something that's maybe unique to Enlisted, or is there a process around it even of really connecting to what that end consumer would deem craveable, would deem, something that is gonna make them connect to this product.
Yeah, for sure. So like input we talked about earlier, right? Which is data, it's market insights, it's consumer insights. Like understanding the full landscape is very important. That's a really important input, right?
Yeah.
Is that data. And then there's the intuition side. And intuition's one way to put it. I would say experience is another way to put it. And so historically agencies, you hire an agency and there's some like big ego at the top and they're like, I know how to do this. Shut up. You go market. I will bestow this thing upon you.
Yeah.
And I just got sick of working in that way in San Francisco. And ultimately that's, that frustration or that idea is what led to enlisting our clients in. And I think the magic for us, like the how we do it, is understanding consumer psychology and how a specific consumer or consumer subset is thinking about brands, thinking about products. A lot of listening, a lot of talking with people, like actual humans.
Yeah.
But then also just a lot of visual listening, right? Watching what's happening on social, watching what's happening in other categories. And then, of course, mood boards are super important. We do those also. But we have a next step that's a pivotal part of our creative process that we just can't skip. And it's called a vision board or creating a vision. And, generally like agencies or designers will do a mood board or like a key visual. And ours is both and neither of those, where a vision is a collection of images. It could be 8 images, it could be 25 images, but it goes beyond what our specific role for this thing is. So let's use the Allbirds packaging, for example. When we're creating the vision board for Allbirds shoe packaging, we are far more concerned with what other brands and products that consumer has in their life than we are for like what's happening in the shoebox world or the shoe apparel or the sneaker world. So of course we know what's happening in the sneaker world.
Yeah.
But then it's like, I want to know what they're wearing. I want to know what car they're driving. I want to know what their house is like. What does their house look like? Like this product, or maybe it's Albert's. Maybe it's the work that we're doing with Blend Tech right now and rebranding and redesigning everything there. Where it's like, how do we what other products are they craving? And once we can understand that, right, then we can understand how this new design is going to not only fit in their world, but actually be aspirational to their world.
Yeah.
And so we create these visions, and we'll create multiple, 3, 4, 5 of these to say, okay, like we can go here, or we can go here, or we can go here. And here's the insights tied to these visions that's going to help us go in the right direction. And that all happens before pen is ever put to paper.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just gaining that insight of where, how the product is going to exist beyond it selling is such a, I think a different spin on you got to get it to a certain point where they're going to buy, but elevating it even further of where's it going to show up in their home and how, and
I'm looking at your site here as we're talking, and I'm seeing here all these sketches that you have for the Allbirds shoe packaging, and it's like, I love that you guys showcase that on your site.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because cool. Now you were talking about, it's like I'm literally looking at what you were just explaining, and that's so interesting to me.
Yeah, that process.
That's a highly curated board of sketches for Allbirds.
I can imagine.
That's amazing.
If you want to see another one, scroll down to one we just posted last week called Sunday, and it's a new car wash from the same founders as like Whistle and Modern Animal. They're now taking on the car wash category. So once again, a category that hasn't been loved.
Yeah.
And so we're going into the car wash category, and our first launch is Sunday. It's a California base. But if you scroll down to the bottom, you can kind of see like a little time lapse of some sketches there as well.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty fun.
So, this is awesome. This looks like a 50s drive-through vibe. I'm kind of getting this looks fun.
That's sick.
My kids would have an absolute blast going here. Oh, this is really cool.
That's the point.
And
the vision boards for Sunday too are fantastic. We had 3 vision boards, and each of them felt unique, but each of them had such a good vibe. And it was just you kind of get to this point where by the time we've curated the vision boards, it's like, there's kind of no wrong answer, right?
Yeah,
so then it becomes like, what's just the right answer for the consumer?
Yeah, I'm looking at what's that song? At the car wash, like that. That's what I'm hearing as I'm looking at these images. This is fantastic.
Awesome. That's legit.
Yeah, Sunday's really fun. Really fun.
Very cool.
What do you feel like are some key like applications of that process for a small brand, a small business to take the data they're receiving, listen to their customers, like really, try to absorb, and then making that decision of that product or that marketing campaign or that brand strategy that they can help them maybe make those decisions? Because I think a lot of people often get stuck in hearing the amazing process you just described and saying, I have zero process. Like I don't even know how to get from A to B, let alone A to Z. Trusting themselves. And, you started out as a small agency. You've been doing this for 15 years. That's why you've been grinding, putting in that time to get to where you are to work with Allbirds and Blend Tech and these amazing Mr. Beast. What are those ways that people can maybe leverage their intuition or experience, their creativity to make those decisions of this is what that consumer wants? Like I hear what they're saying. I know how they're living. Like this is the product or this is the strategy that we're gonna take on.
Yeah. So it's challenging, right? Because especially when you're a startup. So we have a phrase at Enlisted, 0 to hero, and that's for startups that are between 0 to 10 million in revenue, right? 0 to hero. And the team from 0 to 10 is going to be one team, 10 to 50 is another team, 50 to 500 is another team, 500 to a billion is another team. And so the entrepreneur at 0 really has to be able to kind of like lift everything themselves until they have funding. And once they have funding, if they can cast the vision and receive funding, then they can start to bring in the right people who know how to do that. And the challenge that I face with entrepreneurs quite often is they're like, oh, well, I'll just do all of this. Yeah. And it's like, a good parallel could be like, because sometimes you do want to come in with a fresh perspective, right? Yeah. It's like SpaceX comes in to like revolutionize space travel, right? And I'm glad that they are. I'm glad that they did. But it's not Elon who is doing this.
Oh, totally.
He pulled the best NASA
of the best
engineers, right? The best Tesla engineers, the best, aviation engineers to come in and rethink how to do things. Because as we're all in our jobs, we're always thinking like, gosh, if this was mine, I would do it this way. Or I think there's a better way here because I learned that with that. Like bringing that collective knowledge together is really important to be able to do it right. And that's the challenge that 0 to hero entrepreneurs have, where there's like, either I don't have funding and I don't know how to do it myself, or I don't have funding and I know how to do it myself. And that's why a lot of startups, interestingly, come from entrepreneurs or designers or engineers who know how to do the thing because they can do it themselves.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then you do have to enlist the right people, the right strategists, the right visual brand designers, the right industrial designers, the right social media, people. And where it gets even more challenging when you're at a 0 is, how do you fund it? And how do you be smart with your dollars while also doing good work?
Yeah.
And we face that all the time. I mean, there was a company that's in Utah that we courted for probably 6 months, met with the founder and CEO multiple times.
Yeah.
We, he really wanted to rebrand the entire company and redesign all of their packaging because it was all over the map. And at the end of the day, we put a quote together, a proposal, a partnership, all of that. At the end of the day, it's like, hey, I just think that I can go hire an intern from my local college and just do it myself. And that's
so frustrating.
No, for sure.
So frustrating.
It's okay.
Yeah.
But it's not going to create a brand that people are posting organically on their social. It's not going to create a brand where you're just like, I got this thing. You have to see this.
Yeah, 100%. It's those shortcuts, and sometimes there's the limitations, like you described, of funding and decision making, but it's also, I mean, that happens even on smaller scale things of just out of fear, or out of hesitation, or out of ego, of I know best, this is what we're going to do for our consumer. Love to touch on working with Mr. Beast and the Feastable brand. And, there's viral videos all over TikTok and everywhere about him spending, upwards of $100,000 on thumbnails, because he knows the value of, so he's on, the entire opposite end of this spectrum that we are describing, where he really understands that the compounding effect of, and it's not even necessarily quality, because the thumbnail, I could say, is poor quality in my design opinion, right? But not in the algorithm and the engagement sense. It is high quality.
Yes.
Walk us through that process of his, I'm sure, is very driven by similar process and intuition and things of how did that partnership come together? And obviously Feastable is crushing, and growing, and all the other things that Jimmy's doing, and just incredible what his capacity to create and scale and build is. But what was that process like?
So it's been really fun. So we've been working with Night Media, is the management company for Jimmy Donaldson, for Mr. Beast. And so we've been working with Night Media and Jimmy for the last 2.5 years. It actually came from a guy that was at Stance, and he was at Stance since the beginning. He left Stance and went to Night and brought us with him. And so, and funny enough, we had never even worked together at Stance. But when he was at Night, he was like, okay, I'm here to launch brands with creators. Yeah. And then he calls up, I think it was my cousin, who's the VP of design. He's like, who's that agency that you work with? And I was like, oh, it's Enlisted. Here's amazing. Number. And so Ryan Quinn, super cool guy. He calls and he's just like, hey, here's what I'm setting out to do. These creators have, at the time, I think Jimmy had like 80 million followers or 60 million followers or something like that. And so here's what we're doing. And so it's like, okay, great. So we came in, we went through our process. We did interact with Jimmy. We brought him into the process, which was really fun, as well as the Night crew. And fun and funny, right? We were in one of our final concepts, where we really had a kind of a general feel for the Feastable's parent brand, because they had no idea about like brand architecture, brand hierarchy, family of brands, like none of that. Yeah. And so they're just like, we're just launching a chocolate bar. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, that's really cool. What happens next? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what about the next SKU and the next SKU? What about collaborations? What about other products? What about other creators who are going to launch CPG within this? Yeah. Did
they come to you with a name already, or was that part of the process as well?
Yes. So they came to us with the name, with Mr. Beast Bar, and then they came with the Feastables name as well. And then we came in with Feast Like a Beast. We came in with all of the brand positioning, everything that would come in a brand book, in a brand guideline, and then did all the visuals for it, all of the brand identity, all of the language positioning, copy content, all the packaging design, master packs, all of that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so,
do you just have an unlimited supply of chocolate in the office, or what?
Yeah.
You what?
Do you have an unlimited supply of chocolates
we do.
In the office? That's legit.
We do. And actually, okay, so this is a funny one. One of the benefits of not just being a brand team or a packaging design team, also having industrial design in-house, is that we had never designed a chocolate bar before. I don't know if you've seen the bars, but part of Jimmy's thing is that he shares. Like, that's all his money. That's all his wealth that he's doing the videos with. And so we had this concept where, I don't know if you can see it here because the bar's broken, but there's all these like cool little waves. And at the bottom, it's embossed. It says devour. And this bar's already broken off, but at the top, it says share. And so core to kind of Jimmy's ethos is this idea that he shares everything. Like, that's what he's out to do.
Share first.
To share as well.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
really
this
cool.
is really cool. So this is a 3D print of the final concept of the chocolate
dope.
bar here,
Oh,
right? Where
dang.
you've got
Dang,
the
that's
share
sick.
and the devour on the bar. And this is just a 3D print that
Yeah.
then Jack, who is the lead ID for this project, he molded with a silicon mold here in the studio, and we started melting chocolate and
Nice.
like pouring chocolate into the mold to see if it would work.
That's
and
so
then,
dope.
and it worked. And so, you know, that was kind of some of the first stuff with
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy and with Mr. Beast and Feastables. And then it was cool because we had a concept, you know, really close to this. And then we had this Zoom with Jimmy, and he's just like, guys, no, like what people want is they just want to see my face. Like if you just put my face on this, on the packaging, then like they're going to buy it. I promise you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Jimmy, they will buy it. You're absolutely right. Like your voice, you know, you as a brand, like they're going to buy your chocolate. But when they're in retail at 7-Eleven, Walmart, whatever, you're not there. You're not there to be like,
Totally.
This is me, like buy this, you know, this buy me as a chocolate bar. And so we need this thing called taste appeal. And that's where consumers see it and they're like, oh, that super milky
Looks delicious.
chocolate. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I want that.
I seriously
Right?
want
And that
one
starts to
right
bring in
now.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to go pick some
was
up.
that right?
I know. I need to go.
after this
I need to go
episode.
find some because I haven't tried it yet. So
Yeah.
now it's like
Yeah.
you talking to me about
Yeah.
it. You have definitely intrigued me. Like I am for sure gonna go out and buy some.
No doubt.
Mr. Beast
Yeah,
bars.
you got to grab some for sure.
That's amazing.
For sure. And it worked, right? So like we work with Nestle, we work with, you know, all of these big CPG brands.
Yeah.
And launching a brand is really difficult, and
Totally.
it has to scale over time.
Especially
What's
something
cool
that's
is that
going
you
to
have the brand
go
of-
into 7-Eleven and online and to
Exactly.
Walmart. Like
Yeah,
it's got to fit
exactly.
everywhere.
It's got to fit. And so with Mr. Beast, you know, we really targeted Gen Z consumer, giving them something that no other brand had targeted. And it was the same with Mr. Beast Burger, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's really focus on the right consumer here. And then, and what happened was they launched. Jimmy put out a video to say, hey, I'm launching this thing. This is my thing. Like, here's why it's important to me. I don't do a lot of sugar. There's only 5 ingredients or less. You know, there's organic ingredients. And so he kind of ran through why he's doing this and then just how good it tastes. And he sold 4 million bars in the first 90 days.
Holy
Insane.
smokes. Willy
4
Wonka,
million in
man.
the first 90. So like, think about that, right?
It's
like Nestle
insane.
can't touch that.
No.
Mondelez can't touch
No
that.
one.
Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
No one's buying that many crunch bars.
And also that was without retail distribution. That was
Totally.
just DTC on his website.
Oh man.
The
Wow.
power of attention is
Yeah.
just, it's unreal. It's like
Yeah.
one of the things I'm really pushing at Keep Nature Wild is like to be a brand today, a large scale successful brand, like you have to be a media company in a lot of sense.
Yep.
Like you need to be able to produce at scale, not just content to check a box for each social media channel. And it's getting more and more difficult to check all those boxes, but like actually tell stories that matter and create meaningful content for the context of what your consumer is looking for and wants. And because if you don't, creators will do that and then be able to launch products that are meaningful, that connect with people, because that consumption, that attention, that appeal is just, it's next level.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is next level for sure. And the thing that Knight is doing that they're really smart about is that they have enough experience launching merch and like little stuff or little brands that they're going through the process correctly. It's scrappy. Don't get me wrong. Like, these are very entrepreneurial programs that we're doing together with them. But, you know, Mr. Beast Burger, Mr. Beast Bar, Feastables. There's there's a new one coming out that's I want to talk about so bad, but I'm not going to.
Just do it.
Just
Just do it, bro.
Just drop that
beverage.
knowledge, dude. Amazing.
Let's just say we're taking on Capri Sun.
Booyah. Let's
like,
go.
straight
I've got a
up.
2-year-old
And-
or a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, so
Yep.
we'll be ready
Very
at our house.
awesome. All right, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Stay
Yes.
tuned. I think it's launching in April.
Amazing.
And so you know, and we're just doing these ventures. You know, we don't know what the number is at the end of Q4. We had a talk with the team, and they said we want to launch about 10 brands next year.
Wow.
And so we're partnering up with these, to launch these brands, and it is scrappy. It is.
Yeah.
It is not the same budget or
Totally.
the same process as a Nestle or a Mondelez, but the outcome is even stronger. And so one of the things that we try to help these creators, because like other creators, so we love working with creators, and other creators like Selena Gomez reached out to us, just cold called us. Her team did, to say, hey, Selena wants to develop, a bunch of products. And we're talking with Kevin Durant and his team. And we're talking with Tom Segura and his team, and just like different people who are creators who have a channel, who, if we can position the brand and the product authentically to them, and you're listening to it and you're going, oh, of course he would launch that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, of course. And it's like, boom.
Yeah.
Right. You have conversion.
Yeah.
When they launch things, they put their name on water, or they put their
just slap
name on some kind of licensing deal that doesn't make sense for them. No. Consumers sniff it out so quickly.
The intent matters so much. Like, people can feel that intent. If it's to make a quick buck or to just, they'll sell stuff, but the longevity of it is, very short-lived. And
exactly. That was my message. So I spoke at this thing called Vid Summit over the summer, and it's this. It's like for content creators, like, come and learn. It's not like a vid con where it's like a fanboy thing. And so it's Jimmy's a partner in putting it on. Space Station is a partner in putting it on. And so this Vid Summit thing is really cool. So they asked me to speak on how to create a lasting brand, because oftentimes creators are just like, I am the brand.
Let me cash in
as
today.
As long as I'm putting it on my channel, it's going to go.
Totally.
And I'd say you're a big part of the brand, but your brand, ultimately, you as a brand, is going to fade ultimately. So how do we create something that supersedes you or lasts even longer than you?
100%. I think that's such a good concept, because in the moment we think, like, Gary Vee has talked about this, about this concept with Michael Jordan. It's like every kid in his school in the 70s, 80s, 90s, like, or 80s and 90s, like, was rocking Chicago Bulls gear, but like, like the greatest of all time. And it's not that that's not still his status, but that cultural influence fades, right? But a brand has the opportunity to continue to evolve and grow and be culturally significant. And as you were talking about creators, I never really thought of it this way, but I'd imagine there's such great clients to have, because they are so in tune with the end consumer. To be a creator, you have to listen to the feedback loop. Like, you got to make that feedback loop as tight as possible and actually create content that people consume and like and share and engage with. And they'll let you know very quickly if they don't like it.
They don't like it.
And
for sure. They are, but I would say, Sean, like, it's an interesting thing, because launching a CPG brand or a tech brand or a product brand, lifestyle, whatever they're launching, is actually very different than creating the content for it. So like, Jimmy is so dialed in. I mean, that dude works like 28 hours a day.
Yeah.
And he's so dialed into what he does, right? But then also you have to have the wisdom to be like, okay, here's some input. Here's who my consumer is. Here's how I want to come across with this. But I need a partner, right? To not just go do it, but like to do it right. And then let's touch base on what 100%. That looks like. Because he has the wisdom to say, I don't know how to do this thing, so I need the best to be able to do it.
How do you find the best? You talked about people without ego. You talked about, brands turning you away because they can't figure out what you're all about, which I attribute to similarly companies who hire. It's like, you don't fit this job. You can do amazing things, but you don't have this exact experience. So we'll go with someone who just, can
check that box,
can fit into our
and there's a case for that.
Totally.
There is, right? But, especially if it's a practitioner who doesn't need to think, then there's a great case for that.
Totally. Like, we need you to execute on this, thing and
or doesn't need to think big.
Yes. Yeah. But how do you curate a team that is not driven by ego, that can manage you know, and I don't know, we don't need to go too much into the process of creating the teams for these different projects, but how do you recruit, acquire talent that isn't driven by ego? Like, what's your process for evaluating these people? Because I imagine there's no lack of desire to work with you guys and for you guys with the brands and you know, your personality and what you're creating. So we can skip that and more. How do you then go into, okay, we've got these amazing talent coming to us now, but how are we going to sniff out the person who on paper has all the skill set and things we're looking for, but this person just vibed and maybe they don't have all this, or maybe it's different. Like, how do you evaluate that recruitment process to, and no recruiting is 100%, you know, but to really try to curate the best possible outcome when you're filling roles at Enlisted?
Yeah. So, great question. I think there's a few things to consider as we're meeting with people. So we do quite a bit of, you know, interviews and fielding the people, especially when we're in, you know, pretty big growth phases. And so there's kind of two big things. One is seeing their portfolio, right? Like, show me their portfolio, or one of my design directors, because it goes through a filter, right? Like, they don't meet with me
for sure
until the very end, where it's like, you know, pretty much everybody has given a vote of confidence.
Totally.
And so, but for us, it's like, show us your portfolio. Within 30 seconds, we know whether or not you're going to thrive at Enlisted based on your work.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
I mean, it's
Totally.
maybe it's 3 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, like, the second we see it, it's like, it's a very clean filter. You may be great somewhere else, maybe in-house or a different brand or different agency, or you're going to be great at Enlisted. So that's the first filter from a creative standpoint. Second filter is the question that we always ask ourselves is, are they enlisted? And for us, that's a very proprietary thing, right? Like, it asks, you know, it's like, are they entrepreneurial? Are they bold? Are they hungry? Are they design blooded? Are they collaborative? Like, you know, our ethos as a company, are they those things? Because if so, then they'll come in and we'll be able to, you know, teach, train, implement. They'll be able to bring new practices with them, and it's a great fit. If not, then no matter how talented they are, it's not going to be the right fit.
Totally.
It's just not, right? And likewise, you could have somebody who's entrepreneurial, hungry, you know, humble as hell, but bold at the same time, like, have all of those attributes. But if the creative isn't there, then it's just not going to work. Yeah. It's just not.
Yeah. They won't be able to deliver.
Filter of who we bring in and who thrives at Enlisted.
Yeah.
But and then once they're in, like, it's a pretty small club. Like I said, like, we're only 55 people, I think, right now. And so we're not interested in bringing a lot of people in. We're not interested in, like, you know, to me, there's zero ego or zero pride in being like, we're 100 people or nothing.
Yeah.
It's really, really the right people, the right projects and brands, the right clients. And so we have a filter with our clients as well. Yeah. You know, are they going to trust us? Are they going to partner with us? Are they going to respect the work that we do? Are they going to pay us? Are they are they looking to create next level shit? Or are they looking to just kind of extend something or you know, play it safe to get a promotion or whatever?
100%.
You know, are they looking to radically change their category or create a new category altogether? Then it's interesting to us.
It's almost like companies need a dating app, right? To see if they're going to be compatible with with the brand. And you weed out the seriously. No, we're not going to be a good fit. Like, let's not even go there. You know.
Yeah.
So true.
That's really interesting. Well, we have it's 10:22. I think we were going to go till about 10:30, if that's okay, Beau.
Yeah. What's your?
Yeah, sounds great.
You got okay.
Let me check really quick. And
yeah. Double check because
I've got a soft stop at 10:30, a hard stop at 11.
Cool.
Okay.
Great. Yeah. And if something comes up, we're kind of,
Okay.
we'll go into a little more
I'm
kind of
enjoying the
rapid fire.
conversation though,
Same.
because I love talking about these things with people who understand
Totally.
who they are, right? Where
Yep.
it's not like, I don't have to go into a lot of education, you know, it's
Yes.
not the podcast where like, yeah, but like how important is brand really?
Yeah.
Like, isn't the tech and and it's like, okay, let's go back to the
Totally.
basics here.
Yeah. That's one of the things me and Sean have been talking about a little bit, you know, as we're newly starting out on this thing. It's like, when we're pitching to people or talking to people, it's like, we shouldn't have to convince you that you need to work with us. Like, that's such a bummer thing. And so when you find someone who gets what you're doing and they're fully on board, and, you know, there's a little bit of, you know, persuasion or selling that you have to do, but for the most part, it's like, they're just ready to work and confident in what you're going to be able to do.
Yeah, I think so. And I would even say, Will, for us, like we've learned that it's less about persuasion or, you know, it's more just about building that trust, right? Like if they trust you, if they trust your team, if they trust that, you know, your portfolio, then it really does come down to, you know, just the numbers and the timeline.
Yeah.
Totally.
Right. But building that trust, it's like somebody will come to us and they're like, hey, this is what we want to do. And we have a $200,000 budget. And we're like, okay, sounds exciting. You know, let's talk about how we would do that. And I'm not even worried about the $200,000 budget at this point. Really, it's about like what is needed and how can we bring material value to this process. And then we go away and we come back and we're like, okay, it's going to cost $500K to do this.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we only have 200. And we're like, we totally understand that. And it may not be the right time to work together, right? If we really like, you know, look at our margin, maybe we can come in at 450.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's going to be a whole lot more expensive for you to go and do this incorrectly and have that, you know, revenue miss opportunity than it is
100%.
to invest $500,000 and do it right and see that revenue growth.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
if we built that trust in the right way, then it's not that much of an issue.
it's just so good to hear.
Yeah.
It's so good to like hear another agency on their brand that's like thinking, because I mean, I've never been in an agency or in the, but we get connected with brands. We see opportunities. We're just like, we know. So this conversation is like, there's so many pieces that for me, it's like checking boxes here with brands and with what we're doing. And it's validating to hear someone approaching things similarly, or how we've been really thinking about, even when we talk about we're a flexible resource partner, is like, instead of we're an agency, like that mentality of you need content. We've like started to redo our site as like, it's not, we don't do marketing, we don't do ads, we don't do content. We do consumer insight. Like we want to understand where you want to go, and then let's figure out how to get you there. If it's content, if it's, you know, it's very like, validating and also just so fascinating. Like, anyways, Will, you had a question.
I was going to say, is there, when you're talking to, when you're saying, you know, giving the example of, it's going to cost, you know, $500K to do this. And is there like how do you make that tangible or understandable to people, or communicate effectively that point of view? Like, is there a metaphor you use? Is there something that you use that's like, oh, okay, I get what you're trying to tell me? Is there something that helps that click within people?
Yeah. Dollars, revenue growth.
Yeah.
Track record. I'm sure
that usually helps.
Yeah.
Track record. Right. So it's like, once that trust is built, then I can come in, and I'm always very confidential with like the actual budgets of different clients.
Yeah.
But while I'm walking them through, I'll be like, listen, let's pull 5 projects that are pretty similar to the scope of what you're looking at. And I'll tell you, you know, generally speaking, what this client spent and what the return was. And so the returns aren't always immediate, right? You need to see at least a year of of that brand being in market to see the return. But I'll walk them through it. I'll say, like, Allbirds spent this much on this project, and here's what the return was. Purdue, when they rebranded, they spent this much, and here's what the return was. And I don't give them exact numbers, but pretty darn close. Purdue comes in and they spent, I think, all in, probably spent about $1 million to rebrand, redesign the packaging. But their sales went up 7% on a $3 billion business within the first year.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm like, which one was more expensive? Doing the work or not doing it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
That something you didn't even know was just sitting there, waiting for you with the right execution.
Exactly. And then I also try to suss out, like, there's managers or entrepreneurs who are just so, like, they want it so bad, but they're also so nervous because maybe they just raised 10 million, 20 million, whatever. And they're just so nervous about that we don't want to be in a position where they're just like so scared to spend this money. They approve it. They're like, okay, let's do this. And then everything's like review and
on a prayer
session, they're just like, oh, I don't know what to do. And so we also kind of try to weed those out as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like over leveraged and it's like similar if you give people a discount for whatever reason, all of a sudden it's like they want twice the work for half the price. Like,
of course. Of course. And honestly, Sean, sometimes we do give a discount.
For sure.
Sometimes the client will come back in that scenario and they're like, listen, we have 400K and we generally try to run it like a 20-point margin on our projects. And we're like, wow, well, there goes our margin.
Totally.
Is this something that we want to do? Is this something that we believe in? There's a project that we engaged in a couple of years ago that we're still working on. It's a company called EcoSafi, and they're out of Nigeria. No, sorry, that was a different one. They're out of Kenya, out of Nairobi. And so they have two offices, Berkeley and Nairobi, and it's essentially to solve this coal issue in Kenya and lots of the world where 3 billion people cook on coal every day. Well, how can we get them? How can we get them off of coal cooking?
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, especially in Kenya, because by 2030, there will be 0 trees left if people continue to cook this way. 0, no trees, because they're cutting them down, burying them in a hole, smoking them out to sell coal.
Oh.
And so it's a huge issue.
Yeah.
And so we, partner with them to create a brand that could create a micro economy within Nairobi, where we facilitate the product and the stoves that then they take and sell within their communities.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. So they're benefiting from it, not only getting off of coal and a better cooking source, but they're benefiting financially because now they're part of a company that is selling, and it's also not then a US based company trying to come in and change culture or change the way they cook. Right, it's just changing the fuel source to a sustainable fuel source.
That's interesting.
And we gave them a discount and invested. We gave them a discount and I wrote a huge check.
Gave them money. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Speaking to that, like, do you and you don't have to go into like details of things, but do you get creative with your like financial structure? Like, do you ever take equity or even percentage of growth or a mix of various things in the right projects?
All of the above.
Cool. And maybe that's when you're saying partnership, is that more what you look for in hey, we're gonna invest long term in this. I guess, is that a prerequisite or just something that through the process, with the right with the right scenario, that's something you guys would do?
We probably have 25 portfolio companies now where we hold equity in the company. And those are really fun. That's great. We love being partners. But it's in certain, I would say we only do maybe one a year.
Got it.
1 to 2 a year. So it really depends on the opportunity, on the partnership, on the entrepreneur. And I would say also now it's less about Enlisted discounting their rates and it's more about like, if it's something that I believe in, then it's like, hey, okay, I want to, my wife and I want to write a check as an LP or
then
as
it's
a partner to you.
cleaner.
That's going to help offset the cost of Enlisted.
Yeah. Cause it can get,
and other clients too. Like, oh, go ahead, Sean.
No, I think that it can get complicated. It's like, oh, we're going to discount here and a percentage there when it's when it can be clean. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And Enlisted's always been profitable, like from day one. And I always want us to be profitable.
Totally.
And so, you know, we track our EBITDA. Like we have a full, you know, accounting for our P&L. Like we've got a team who's running the business of Enlisted, and it's a great business. And it enables the designers to truly, you know, create next level shit for our clients and the brands that we work with. But we just have to be smart about it.
How do you not just launch 20 brands yourself? like how do you mean? And clearly that is like, how do you balance launching more internal projects or not launching more internal, because you see things or you see trends or you have this data, you have this into, and you know, clearly you could probably take any category, you know, and say, you know,
crush it.
A t-shirt brand, we're going to do this and we're going to do it different. We're going to do it in this way.
You have the tools.
How do you stay focused?
How do you tame that inner beast
So it's a great question. We have lots of ideas. When we joined Pattern, part of the reason that we joined Pattern was to launch our own brands. We actually do have a mechanism for that, and it's called Village Brands. So villagebrands.com is the site where it's the group that we're launching. There's a group within Pattern that is essentially a mix between Enlisted and Pattern, and then a dedicated group with Village, where we have employees that are, you know, multi-channel sales, marketing, digital, you know, experts, co-founders with us in these different brands that we're launching. And so we're launching our own brand. So we launched our first brand called Welcome Home, HOHM, welcomehome.com. And it's a home scenting company.
Oh, cool.
And we just launched it in November, and then we're launching our next one called Aurea, which is a beauty device and serum company, and that launches in February. So we're you know, positioning these so that they're not competitive to our clients, but also positioning them because we see opportunities in the market where we're like, hey, we could really make a material difference in this market, and then we're launching that brand ourselves. But for an agency and a creative, what we have to understand is that we sometimes assume that if we create the brand, the branding, the product, the go-to-market, like if we do all of that correctly, then consumers are just going to flock.
It's true.
But the truth is, we have to do all of that correctly, and there has to be a dedicated business team to actually build a business out of it.
Very
and unless I want to step away from Enlisted to do that second part, I'm not interested in launching 20 brands. I'm interested in launching one or two and doing those well.
I think that's
because I have the Village on the other side to support the brand launch.
100%.
That's cool.
I think that is a very valuable insight, because it's, you know, when you are someone who's creative, you see things, it's very easy to get caught up in ideas and the value of ideas, and also in great strategy. And I think equally to, like, I think strategy is critical to, especially long-term growth of a company, of a brand, the things that we've talked about of not being a flash in the pan, but being something that is gonna sustainably live on and be something with a legacy that can evolve over time. But without the execution, that's just a pretty document that sits in Drive or Dropbox or somewhere where, you know, if it's not used as a tool, it doesn't create the value that it could.
Exactly. And so we actually do have a hopper at Enlisted where we've got ideas that we know would be successful in categories that haven't been loved yet. And, you know, Dane Tanner, my VP of industrial design, he's been enlisted for over 7 years, the most talented industrial designer I've ever worked with. And he came to me probably about a year ago. And he's just like, hey, I've been watching a category. Nobody's done anything meaningful. I've got a concept. And I'm like, awesome, pitch it to me. So he did. And then we essentially put a budget against it to say, okay, you've got like 5K to, and obviously invested resources, right? To build this into an actual pitch, to build a business model around it, to make prototypes and have like working prototypes for this, or at least looks like models and prototypes for it. And then we went and pitched it to Dave and Mel, who are the founders of Pattern, and we just said, hey, here's the category potential, like the market cap. Here's how this category hasn't been loved yet. We have an idea in which we could come in and love this category. We call it quipping. We could quip this category like toothbrushes. Did. And I've told Simon that, he just laughed. So, how do we equip this category? And so now we have that brand in the hopper, where when these first two are launched and well, then, next year, 2024, we could say, hey, let's tackle that category. Let's go.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Two thoughts came to mind. One is enlisted hiring, because that sounds like just an epic place to work. But it's funny that you said call it quipping. I don't know how familiar you are with gas station culture or soda beverage culture, but here in Arizona we have QT. Utah, you got the Maverick Quick Trip gas station.
Oh yeah.
But I often refer to opportunities where, so they came in and basically in the early 2000s, like made clean gas stations, basically. Like the simplest version is like clean. You want to go there. The customer service is great. They greet you. They pay their employees well. And like, you don't have sticky soda floors, when you walk in. And now they've elevated even further with like food and all these things. But it's like, what opportunities are there in similar overlooked categories where you could take the QT model and apply it, and just really great service and customer service? And so that's just what came to mind when you were talking about that. It's like, me and friends have talked like, okay, where's like a service type business that just is nasty and rough that you could apply the QT model to and just dominate. So I think that's such a good process of evaluating opportunities. I think it's even applicable in a brand. Like, where are those overlooked categories? Something we're doing at Keep Nature Wild is actually evaluating our categories and what are we overlooking within products that should be their own business within the business. So there's so many products, t-shirts, stickers, hats, all these amazing designs, but they often get launched and then it's time to campaign for the next drop. And it's just this like cycle of drops versus like, there's probably 25 core products or categories like fanny packs or stickers within the brand that could be $1 million or multi-million-dollar brands or businesses, business units within the business. And I think this process of like evaluating, like, what are these overlooked categories in a space or even within your own business that are overlooked, that with the right design process or the right creative process, just think about it in a different way, that could be that unlock, similar to what Quip did of like toothbrushes. I think similar things can be applied in a small business. Is like, what are these processes? I see it in, the service business. There's a few companies here in Arizona where you're competing with, a yellow notepad, legal pad, that these old school business people are working on, and just by dialing in, the process, they're building multi-million-dollar businesses because they're just streamlining the efficiency and making it a good consumer experience,
Exactly. Which is exciting. It's exciting to create. It's exciting to see. I mean,
totally.
I get excited about that as a consumer. Like, I'm a total consumer. I get some of my best inspiration by shopping.
Totally.
And like, not always even buying.
Yeah.
Like, my mom told me when I was younger, a teenager, she's like, Beau, you're too materialistic, right? These things are too important to you. And I'm like,
funny.
yeah, I am. And I think I kind of fought that for a little while
Yeah.
until I was just like,
Just
yeah,
embrace it.
I am.
Yeah. Love it.
I like this.
Yeah.
And so I love shopping,
Yeah.
and she loves that about me now. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's like, I love shopping. I love just experiencing, seeing, watching people interact, what's working, what's not working. And
Totally.
then, yeah, really understanding those consumers and those categories of where to play. And I'll tell you one that we're working on now that's really exciting, called ARC. So arcboats.com. And ARC is a couple of engineers. Now they're like 50 people plus, that from Tesla and SpaceX and NASA, and like, really incredible engineers. So we partnered with them to electrify the boat category.
Oh, wow.
I
think
what Tesla's done.
Are you guys running ads already?
Yeah. So
I feel like
I
feel like I've seen this somewhere in a feed. Cool.
That's great. And it's still kind of stealth mode. ARC 1 launched and sold out as a $350,000, essentially like what Tesla did with the Roadster.
Okay.
That was ARC 1.
Yeah.
And that was just us saying, okay, we're here, we're figuring out the technology. Here's the boat. Let's go. They invited Enlisted to come in and be the design agency, and then invest in it. So I was brought in with who else is on the team? The investment team is like Serena Williams, Will Smith, Sean Combs. I think KD's on it.
Wow.
One of the founders of Casper, myself. Like everybody kind of has their like strategic, input into the investment team. And then Andreessen Horowitz, Lower Carbon Capital, Eclipse Capital. So good VCs came in and put some cash down for it. And that's a category that is so funny because, like, how in the world are there still ski boats today? High-end $250,000 ski boats that have freaking glitter on them. They have glitter.
Yeah, totally.
How is it that the industrial designer of these
and you're
boats
just getting
are all,
fumes in your face,
swoopy-doopy?
It's so true. It's so
what?
true.
Like, sorry, did I miss something? And that there's some kind of a design code that was set in 1976 that anyone who breaks that will be put to death.
It's the sailor's code, man.
Yes, something. So true.
Something, right?
Yeah,
wow, that's so funny.
Hang me now.
Yeah.
And I refused to buy a boat. Like how many times have I had the conversation with my, brother-in-laws who are like, let's get a boat. Let's go on a boat. Let's go on a boat together. And it's like, I can't support a category that is doing this to human beings.
You would look good in burgundy glitter and,
it's almost a moral issue.
That's funny. That's funny.
And
so true.
So, when ARC came along, it's just like, okay, let's do this and let's do this differently. Let's do this for the consumer of today rather than the consumer of yesterday, yesteryear, generation.
Have you heard
that's
of
what we're doing, and it's been wildly successful so far.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Amazing.
These are awesome.
It's pretty sick, huh?
Yeah.
I need to check it out because
I want one.
That's such
me too.
like a revolution because like growing up in boating and going to the lake is huge, but it's like still you have. I mean, now they have like the inline props and things where you're not like worried about getting chopped up, but still the fumes and the gas like as you're climbing back into the boat,
well, fumes and gas, but think about it from a performance standpoint. Like I weigh about 200 pounds, so I'm a pretty, I'm a lead weight out there behind the boat, right?
That's true.
So here's 200 pounds. That's 25 feet behind the boat. I forget how long it is, right? And you're like, hit it, and this gas engine is supposed to rev up so quick that it can pull 200 pounds that's fighting against it with water drag up onto the surface to then be able to wakeboard. If you've ever driven in a Tesla, especially in ludicrous mode, you know what 100% torque feels like.
Yeah. Totally.
Now imagine 100% torque pulling you out of the water.
Yeah.
I'm
imagining it right now.
Terrifying, but also
I'm imagining it right now.
I guess it would be much less like jerky of like once it builds up.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Crazy.
It's incredible.
Have you heard the term T-shaped, like personality or T-shaped skill set for?
I don't know. Tell me.
So like,
Describe it to me.
and I don't even remember where I heard this, but the idea is that like there's certain people who have a really great breadth of knowledge, but have also very deep knowledge in one or a few very kind of specific like skill sets and areas. And you strike me as someone who has this capacity to absorb from very maybe disconnected areas of, I'm sure, even investing in ARC and the experience there, even though there's these design elements, but that process and that team to the experiences that you have day to day and like absorbing all of that knowledge can then be applied into these very like core skill sets that you have. Is that something
I love that.
you think about like I guess what I'm getting at is how do you process this information of like, because it feels like you are very much absorbing a lot of your surroundings, the experience, the conversations you're having with clients, the things that you're able to, and I'm guessing, but just from our conversation, you're able to draw from one experience to the next and connect dots that I think most people maybe don't see or wouldn't see right off the bat.
Yeah.
What does that ring true? Is that something that you feel you've always had a capacity for, kind of being observant to experiences or products or things? Like when you were describing what works, and I say this because my brain very much works this way. And the first time I went to New York, the favorite thing from my trip was going into these small restaurants and seeing what worked. Like literally, that's what I told. Like the menu to the like how they leverage the space to like how mean or nice the cashiers were and like how they did the food and like just these like small details that I don't think is a normal thing, but but just like what worked for these restaurants to be able to be in, you know, one of the best food cities in the world and do it in a way that was unique to them was just so like, it was just like firing on all cylinders as I was, you know, enjoying the city. What is that process, or what, I guess I'm trying to get in your brain a little bit of like, how do you absorb these things and then channel them to these various like projects or tasks or challenges that allow you to maybe see them differently?
Yeah. I can totally relate with the New York restaurant experience. I think a couple of things that help with this is having a brain that never turns off, which lots of people have, right? I'm fortunate / unfortunate that I've got a short sleep gene. So I need 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night in order to function. And so I'm able to think and work. I think the more difficult thing for me is to get to a space of quietness where, you know, through meditation, through, you know, a stillness practice, like letting go and stopping to think. And, you know, a friend of mine is leading this meditation group that I'm in. And he said, tonight we're going to focus on this, the idea that now we're getting nowhere. Now we're getting nowhere. And it was so contrary to me.
Totally.
Now we're getting nowhere. And I just sat with that. We all sat with that for an hour and 4 minutes. And it was incredible. And so for me, yes, there's endless inputs, endless. And we are banks of knowledge. We are banks of experience. And so we should be able to be banks of empathy and love and care as well. And so when we care for the consumer, when we care for the designer, when we care for the market, when we care for people, like at the end of the day, I just want to create happiness. Like I just want to create things that bring joy to
Totally.
people, even if it's just a moment of
Yeah.
joy.
Yeah.
Like I just want to create those things. And so this bank of constant inputs um, is inspiring and it's daunting. But I think that the biggest thing isn't just the bank, it's the filter of how I kind of categorize each of these things. And then how do I cross pollinate between all of these different thoughts and opportunities? And how does that then express itself in, a brand creation or a brand launch?
Totally.
I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it
That's kind of
does.
how
I think tying
really
it
cool.
inputs and
into
outputs.
to empathy in that capacity is such a, like, even an aha moment for me of how those things also connect to emotional, like that absorption or that capacity to notice or see or feel is something that I think is such a compelling way to think about brand building and community building, because at the end of the day, to grow community, to grow a brand that really leaves an impact on people's lives, like empathy has to be a leading factor. You have to be able to really get into the mind space of a consumer, what it is that they're motivated by, what it is that's going to resonate with them, and then position the product, the experience, the joy of what this thing is going to bring them in a way that actually does satisfy that thing that they're looking for.
Yeah.
How do you evaluate soft skills in employees, in brand partners, in projects that you look to bring on? You mentioned ego, you mentioned, a lot of these already, but when you think about, taking on a new employee or taking on a new project or a new client, where in your evaluation process do these soft skills of empathy and kindness and kind of win-win type mentality, like what are those core things that really drive those key decisions for you?
Yeah, I think we talked about it earlier, right? Where it's like, what are the things that we're looking for in people? We're looking for people that we want to be around. Okay, everybody says that, right? We're looking for people who are super creative. Well, of course, we're a design agency,
Yeah.
right? But what
Totally.
are those things? It's like there are some unique things where it's people who have that entrepreneurial spirit. Maybe they're not in a place in life where they're ready to go and be their own, you know, boss or found a
Yeah.
company, or maybe they've got a side hustle that they're kind of itching that, right? Or scratching that itch. But at Enlisted, like we want people who are going to give themselves and give of themselves and give the best of themselves, but that are going to do it not because they're trying to like get my approval or for me to choose their concepts or whatever. We're doing it so that they can grow. Are they in a place in their
Totally.
career where they're hungry and they want to grow, they want to learn, right? And maybe they've got 10 years in on their career and the portfolio is incredible. And then it's like, okay, does this person want to grow? Because my goal for all of my enlistees is when they leave Enlisted, whenever that is, that these years at Enlisted were the most challenging and where they grew the most and they were the most exciting and they did the
Totally.
best work of their career. And
Yeah.
of course, they made friends along the way. And of course, they had cool experiences and some painful experiences too. But it was that experience where they look back and they're like, that's where I grew the most.
Totally. Yeah.
So those are the people that it's like, are they in that place? Like I've interviewed
Yeah.
people who are incredibly talented, who come from my competitive agencies,
Yeah.
where I'm just like, wow, like they're amazing. But they're also kind of like, they already know and they're not
Yeah.
looking to
Not
grow.
willing to grow.
And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's a right fit for us.
I think that's something in the most successful people that I've met and talked with, whether they're, middle-aged or in their 70s, like there's that hunger for like learning and knowledge and growth, and that it's just this never ending pursuit. It's like, you know, and I think that's where ego and kind of knowledge and education like cross paths, and that like pursuit of growth, that pursuit of there's not an end to what I can achieve, or what I can, the capacity that I have to like accomplish, and I think perspective as well. Like as we get to these various things, I think people that really apply perspective and try to look at like, okay, what is this that I'm trying to accomplish, and see it in a way that is, you know, this progression versus like, oh, I know my stuff, like just tell me what to do, I'll do it, versus like, no, let's learn together and let's grow, and let's become better versions of ourselves on the back end of this project or this business or this experience.
Yeah.
100%.
And there is a difference you're going through, because some of these experiences are really difficult, right? But it's like there's a difference between like drama and trauma, and like drama tears people apart, whereas trauma brings people together. And so as we look at, you know, this path, it's not easy. Like, it's just not, you know, and just like any company we've got, you know, we're learning and we're growing. And I think that where we find the most success is where everybody is looking to grow and looking to learn. Then cool, we're all learning together and we're all growing together, and it creates more of a peer-led, you know, leadership style.
Is that something you have created a process around to really understand? Because not everyone looks to grow in the same way, where you know uniquely where people are looking to grow. That's awesome.
Yeah, we've invested a lot in that, a lot. Yeah. So everybody at Enlisted has OKRs, which is Google's form of goal setting. So objectives and key results. So, and it's the same with Pattern and Village as well. So every person has their OKRs, which then ladder up to their team OKRs. So like the industrial design team, that then ladder up to the Enlisted OKRs. Enlisted OKRs then ladder up to Pattern's OKRs. And so everybody is accountable to setting those themselves with their director, right? And then up to me, and then me to Pattern. And it's just been a really, really good process for us. And then we touch base on, everybody has a one-on-one once a month with their director, whoever that is. And you just touch base on your OKRs. You know, how are things going? Where can we help you? Like, these are your goals, right? That obviously make a better Enlisted, but like, how can we help you with each of these? And then when somebody isn't, you know, when somebody isn't succeed, or they're not growing, it's like, okay, let's talk about this. It gives us a mechanism to be able to talk about these things.
I love that. Final question.
I just want you to clue me in on what OKR is, because that's a new term for me.
Yeah, it's an objective and key result.
Oh, okay.
So what's our objective?
Yeah.
And then what is the key result? What does that look like? And how are we going to get there?
Yeah.
And I think that there's a website called like objectivesandkeyresults.com or something like that.
But someone coined it.
It's just it's a business goal setting thing that Google developed over the last like 20 years.
Love that.
One of the things I like about you, Beau, is you have all these little cool, these little nifty sayings that you. So I've heard mild to wild. I've heard zero to hero, and then what was it, drama to trauma or something like that. And it's like, these are great little like phrases to use. So
these are lived experiences.
Yes, I love it.
For sure.
It's great.
All right, final question.
And they're not all for me either. Dane, my VP of Industrial Design, he's the one who created Mild to Wild.
That's great.
That's so good. Yeah. All right, final question. What role has kindness played in building your success?
You know, I was thinking about that on the way into the studio this morning. And the reason I was thinking about it is because I'm sure that there are people out there that are past enlistees who would say, Beau's not kind. You know, and I hold that. And I think that there's people out there who, you know, had their designs ripped off the wall. I know that there are had their designs ripped off the wall, or, you know, what is this shit? Aren't you listening to the consumer? And, you know, we critique each other so brutally here. We keep each other so brutally honest in our work that it can be very challenging. And so the word kind, how we're kind is a very interesting thing, or a very interesting
kind. Candor is
Enlisted.
That's an approach.
Yeah, it is. And we're very frank, and we're very open and honest, and we just don't have time or mental, emotional bandwidth for dealing with the bullshit that, is in everyday business. But at the same time, we also want people to bring their person and their personality and their whole self to the table at Enlisted. And there is room for all of that. And so where we're kind is, from like a data standpoint, we're over 50% female. We have pay equity across every bandwidth and every role at our company. The majority of our leadership team is female. And so and also the majority, I think it's the majority at Enlisted now, is international, or they were born outside of the US. And so there's a lot of different perspectives, right? And that's what we want. We're curating these perspectives to come together and to create this. And so how can we be kind as Enlisted? Well, we can push each other and lead each other to do the best work that we can do, to create that next level shit. That's kind to each other, and in a very empathetic, loving way, but like in a very, demanding way as well.
Totally.
That's how we can be kind to each other's growth. Then we can be kind to our clients by always producing the best work we can, by always going above and beyond. If we're doing that right, then we're being kind to our consumers who are buying the products that we're creating. Right.
Totally.
And so we're being kind to that person also. And whether you swap out the word kind or joy, we're delivering that joy across each of these people. At the end of the day, when we see our product, we're at somebody's house or whatever, it's like, oh, that's great. What do you like about that? And they're like, oh my gosh, so here's what I like about it. Have you seen it before? And I'm like, yeah, I think I've seen that before. Right. And then they tell you why they love it, why it brings them joy in their life. And I think that's a kind thing to do, to bring joy in people's lives, whether that's an enlistee, a client, or an end consumer.
100%. I agree. I think it's definitely an area where candor is a major work in progress for me. But there's that realization that if you aren't delivering candor, like you're actually not being kind. Because you're holding back on allowing someone to grow and progress and to put their best work forward and to really get honest, direct feedback. And so I think there's that misconception that kindness has to be nice, which is very different, or
for sure,
or a pushover, or soft, right?
It's
like,
you're exactly right.
It's about kind of really thinking about the value that you can contribute to someone and doing what it takes to do that. Because sometimes it is painful and it's hard.
Yeah, it is. And that's okay, because we love each other enough to go through the pain together and to grow together.
100%.
And, my managing director, Nick Barra, is incredible. He's an incredible leader. And it's somebody who I've wanted to work with for years and years. And I'm grateful that he's at Enlisted now. And he, in one of our leadership meetings, led a conversation around Brene Brown's nice problem. Right. So she has quite a bit of content around this idea of companies having a nice problem. And so over the last year and a half, we really tackled that as a company to overcome our nice problem so that we can actually be kind in a deeper way.
Yeah, I love that.
That's great.
So great. Beau,
cool.
Thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. So insightful, so much knowledge. Really appreciate you taking the time and chatting with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, dude.
Thanks, Beau.